Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/IDontWorkHereLady. And today is another great day to tell 3 new great stories. So let's get started. I hate clappers. This just happened today. I'm at my local Wally World, Walmart, dressed in my Hawaiian shirt, shorts, and not looking anything like a Walmart employee. I'm with my cart, grabbing some chips and salsa for a gathering I have this evening. A nice gal of about 5'0" asked me to help her get some chips from the upper shelf. Why is it the shelves for the chips are always empty at this Walmart? Me, being 6'6", get asked often to grab things from high shelves. I feel for you vertically challenged folks, so I grab the chips and pass them to her. She thanks me and goes on her way. Then it happens. The huff. I turn and see her. She says, "Now that you're done flirting, where can I find the batteries?" I chuckle and say, "Well, what kind?" And she cuts me off and starts clapping. "Where are the batteries?" I then say, "I'm sorry, you don't need to clap. I don't work here." She cuts me off again and says, "Don't make me get your manager. Where are the batteries?" Now, I knew what she was asking, but I hate clappers. It's the rudest form of communication possible. I say they're over in the automotive section. Just talk to one of the service techs out there. And she storms off. I continue my shopping. When about 5 minutes later, I hear the scream, "That's not what I wanted. Where is that butthole associate?" I start grinning. Here it comes. She hunts me down and says, "They only have car batteries there. I wanted small batteries for electronics." I look at her, smile, and say, "You were not specific." Her mouth drops open. She gasps like I just stole all the oxygen from the area. Then she says, "Where's your manager?" Now, I work remotely for my company. My manager works in a different state. I say to her, "Probably in St. Louis." "I tried to tell you, lady, I don't work here." I then turn and walk away while she spews hate and vulgarity in my direction. I'm calling it a good day. Don't clap at me. I'm not performing for you. I do love it when somebody gets an instant dose of their own medicine. And our next story. This is what happens when you follow corporate policy purely because it's there without applying critical thinking. So a few months ago, I needed some quick cash for reasons, so I got a night job as a janitor. It's easy work, pays good, doesn't conflict with my day job. My new employer, though, has a dumb rule. Employees are not allowed to buy any supplies, tools, or equipment for any reason. Every single purchase of literally everything has to go through the corporation's purchasing department. Doesn't matter whether it's a X dollar server or a $4 bottle of Windex, you have to requisition it, and they order it. Actually, I lied. You don't requisition it. You have to report it to your manager that you need something. The manager has to requisition it. I asked why all the red tape and got some BS answer about liability. I've long since learned not to question authority if I get paid the same either way. So I went about my business. So, talking of Windex, I used up all the Windex after a few weeks, so I asked my manager for some more. Next week, it hadn't come in, so I reminded him about it. He said he forgot to fill out the requisition, but he'd do it as soon as he could. The week after, still no Windex. I reminded him again. I got a lecture about how he's a busy man and he doesn't have time to drop everything and requisition a $4 bottle of window cleaner. I offered to just go to the store and buy it myself because, it's just $4. He looks me dead in the eye and asks if I'm trying to get myself fired. I almost got into an argument with him about how ridiculous it is that he won't order it and won't let me buy it even if I pay for it myself, and I can't do my job without it, but I still get paid. But then I remember that I still get paid, so I say something like, "No, sir, I'm sure we can wait a little longer." And everything's fine, for a little bit. But eventually the mirrors and windows start to get dirty and people start complaining that I suck at cleaning windows. I tried to clean them with regular water, but it didn't really improve things. So I got an idea. An awful idea. I had a wonderful, awful idea. I went to the store and bought a bottle of Windex, put it in the lunchbox I bring every night, and oh so casually walked into work that night. After a couple hours, all the glass in the facility had never been so clean, but I had to make it look like I hadn't directly disobeyed company policy and my boss. So when I ran into my boss later, I said, "Hey, thanks for ordering the Windex. I appreciate it." His reaction was along the lines of what I would expect if I said, Hey, thanks for ordering the hardcore porn magazines for me to read instead of doing my job. I really appreciate it. But my plan worked. It wasn't me he was angry with. It was whoever had the audacity to bring a bottle of Windex into the facility. He demanded to know who it was. Geez, I got no idea, I said, sounding confused. I thought it was you. But I guess it could have been anyone. People have been complaining that I haven't been keeping the windows clean. And my boss decided to make it his mission to find out who. When I left, he was in the security office with 2 other managers reviewing security tapes to try to figure out how the Windex got into the facility. Suddenly, not only he, but 2 other managers plus a security officer have the time to just drop everything for a $4 bottle of window cleaner. I decided not to point out that irony. They haven't taken my Windex away, though. I declare the plan a success. None of us work here, lady. So back in 2009, the company I'd been working for went out of business, yet another victim of the credit crunch, and after about 6 months of unemployment, I was starting to get a little depressed. So my mom suggested that I should do some volunteer work, just to give me something to do. After checking with the job center that it wouldn't affect my unemployment benefits, I went to the local branch of a national charity to see if they needed anyone. They did, and I soon became a part of the small team that ran that particular location. Everyone there was a volunteer, mostly older, retired people, so me being in my mid-20s at the time, I was given most of the physical work, which suited me fine, as I'm not too good at paperwork. Now, I should explain that the charity rents out equipment for elderly and disabled people, charging just enough to keep us running and providing a little extra for any unexpected cost that might pop up. The only paid employee we had was a manager who worked out of a different branch in another town, maybe an hour away. Our branch was located in a small building adjacent to a pay and display car park in the center of town, with about 7 dedicated, clearly marked parking bays. Given our location, it wasn't unusual for people to come in asking questions about the car park, and we all quickly became used to it. Sometimes we'd get people angry about getting a ticket, but they'd usually calm down when we explained that it didn't have anything to do with us. Now that I've set the scene, on to our story. It's been 10 years, so I'm going by memory. Cast: me, team leader, TL, volunteer 1, V1, entitled lady is EL. So it was a pretty normal day. Must have been a Tuesday, given who was on, and I was down one end of the single large room that made up the bulk of the building, doing some housekeeping, when an older woman, I'd say mid to late 60s, walked in. I only looked around to see if I was needed to get anything, but kept out of it. Little did I know, I was about to experience what I now know to be a Karen in the wild. V1: hello, how can we help you? EL: yes, I parked in one of the disabled bays next to the building here. V1: oh, and have you used this before? EL: no, I'm just taking my husband to the dentist. This was across the road that ran down one side of the car park. V1: oh, I'm sorry, but those bays are reserved for people using our scheme. EL, cutting her off: my husband has a blue badge. For those who don't know, a blue badge is a government-issued disabled parking permit that's recognized almost everywhere in the UK. V1: I see, but those bays aren't part of the actual car park. It's a blue badge. We can park anywhere. Note: no, you can't. There's still restrictions on their usage, but not everybody reads the booklet that comes with it. At this point, our team leader stepped out of her office by the door. TL: I'm sorry, but those are private bays. We rent them separately from the landowner. But my husband has a blue badge. Yes, but they're private parking bays. You obviously don't understand how these things work. TL, leaning forward on the crutches she needed to get around. Really? Now, I'm still friends with TL, and while she's a friendly, outgoing person, I've seen her when she blows her lid, and decided that it would be a good idea if I stepped in at this point. Me: private parking spaces aren't necessarily covered by the blue badge. EL simply glares at me as if I was beneath her notice, so I go back to what I'd been doing. I didn't pay much attention to the rest of the conversation, but eventually EL stormed off in a huff and moved her car. Not long after, one of the volunteers, I forget who, was outside and saw her having parked on the road directly outside the dentist talking to a traffic warden. Note: the car park was private property and was overseen by a private company, so a council-employed traffic warden had no say over anything that happened there, no matter how excitedly EL gestured towards our office. We assumed that that was the end of it. But would I really be posting this here if that was the case? No. No, I wouldn't. EL comes back in, demanding to speak to our manager. TL's behind the desk at this point and informs her that she is indeed the team leader, even holding up her laminated name badge that clearly stated as much. EL scoffed at this and repeated that she wants to speak to the manager now. TL explains that the manager is based out of the main office in the other town, but dutifully produces a letterhead with the phone number and address, even writes on it the manager's full name. EL grabbed the piece of paper and said, "I'll have you all fired for this." TL, V1, and me, all laughing to various degrees, say, "We're all volunteers here. None of us are actually employed by the charity." EL gives a harump that would put an enraged elephant to shame, spins on her heels, and storms off again. Well, we laugh about it, but put it out of mind as we have better things to think about. Then about 2 weeks later, one of the trustees for the charity pops in and we learned what happened next. EL called the main office and spent an hour on the phone with the manager, not realizing that TL had already emailed her an account of what happened. The manager tries to explain to EL that no, we'd actually been in the right, and yes, she would have gotten a ticket if she'd parked in one of our bays. EL was having none of it and informed the manager that she'd be taking it to her superiors. A few days later, a letter had arrived addressed to the managing director of the charity. The name on the return address evidently was the same that EL had been given. Well, charities don't have managing directors, as no one in the office felt like getting involved with that particular brand of crazy. The story having gotten around to everyone, the unopened letter was stuck to the notice board with a thumbtack. To the best of my knowledge, it remains there to this day. I've since found a job, but I still pop into the charity with tea, coffee, and biscuits from time to time, but I always look in the window first to check for Karens. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.